Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. I'm Jarrod Prugar alongside Kevin Quigley. Kevin, Penn State home again for the first time this season. They host Bowling Green. It's a good time to be at Penn State. People are going to see the Beaver Stadium upgrades. They're actually going to get to see a game at Beaver Stadium at long last.
Yeah, and after an impressive performance last week against West Virginia, you kind of get a little tune-up game. And no disrespect to Bowling Green State University, but they're no West Virginia University. They're certainly not on that caliber. Uh, Last week gave up 17 points at home against an FCS opponent in Fordham, so not a prolific defense that they have, and 41 points is a big number that they put up, but it's again an FCS opponent. So uh, it's a good game for Penn State to kind of maybe keep to that 1/3 of the playbook that they showed against West Virginia, and just try to refine the things that that they just maybe thought that as media, as fans, think that Penn State did really well in XYZ, but maybe the coaching staff is like, X, like a little rusty here, Y, a little tweak there, and Z, like, there's some improvement right there for it. So I think this is a game for the coaches. This is a game for the sickos to really understand where Penn State stands and how that they can get better.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect opportunity at a get right game. Obviously there's some room for improvement for Penn State. I think the continuity offensively in the second half wasn't quite there after they scored in that first drive. So that's something you want to get better at. But the biggest thing is just come in and take care of business. Like, that you're the better team against Bowling Green. That's not up for debate. But you can get right and get a lot of guys playing time going into the bye week, because they have this early bye week on September 14th, which is great for them. So you can go in and get your guys reps for the first string, get Prabula in there with the first team as well, like they did late against West Virginia. And then you can get your younger guys in and get them some game experience, and hope that you can do that not only just this weekend, but also against Kent State too, knowing that after Kent State, Big Ten play begins. So, I mean, you have a lot of options, and there is some room for improvement. Don't get me wrong. Penn State played a great game. Drew Aller played phenomenally. 11 of 18, I think he was, or 11 of 17. Sorry, they were 12 of 18 as a unit. But you see that you have some room for improvement here and there with the receivers. Obviously, there's only 18 targets to go around, so that's not necessarily a problem. Defensively, I thought they played a great game. And for Penn State, this is the perfect opportunity to just come in and get right. Focus on your technique, your fundamentals, running and executing the play correctly, and then moving on. And I don't think we're going to see a lot out of Penn State offensively as far as plays are concerned or designs are concerned. But now this is the perfect opportunity to hone those things in during this week.
Yeah, and like it's a good time to get the 5 stars or like the young guys. Like, I mean, there's 2 5 stars in the offensive line that really only saw 10 or 11 snaps last week. Maybe Alex Birchmeyer and Javen Williams. Like, that's the future. What happens if Drew Shelton goes down with an injury, or anybody of that nature? This is the time where can they play 15 minutes of offense? Like, do they get the whole fourth quarter? Do they maybe get the second half of the third quarter? If Penn State's up, let's say 42-0 with 7.5 minutes to go in the third quarter, like, A, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, and B, that's the perfect time. Like, give them 22 minutes of D1 football. They've not had that game experience beyond the blue-white game, and then like guys like Tamir Robinson. Tamir Robinson's second in line behind Kobe King, or Tyler Elston and Kobe King. Like, maybe not the deepest, and you need 2 middle linebackers to play all game because Kobe King hits somebody hard in the hole and like knocks the wind out of himself for 2 or 3 plays. Tyler Elston comes in, and then it's Tyler Elston and Tamir Robinson for the rest of the series. So you got to get that depth. This is the great game to build on it. And yeah, like you said, only 17 drew 11 of 17 last week. Um, only 2 wide receivers caught a ball. Only 2 wide receivers, I think, had a target. I don't think anybody beyond Amari Evans and Trey Wallace as a wide receiver got a target. Let's get some Luke Reynolds some action. There's just so much more. I mean, Caden Saunders, it seems like he's been left off the depth chart at wide receiver. Uh, he has a lot of room to improve on his end there to get there. And what does Julian Fleming look like? Julian Fleming doesn't have a target yet. So I think it's I hate to say exploit Bowling Green, but you exploit Bowling Green to your advantage.
And that's the thing, you look at it in the grand scheme of things, like Fleming impacted the game more than the stat sheet will ever show. And I think that's the greatest thing about it, right? That's the opportunity that he has. And that's why he's such a good pickup for Penn State. That's why they wanted him out of high school. He's a good blocking receiver. He's not afraid to block, which is sometimes difficult to get if you're a receiver. And the other thing too is, Caden Saunders is battling some injuries. He's a little bit banged up. He was in punt return, kickoff return. So getting him in the game at receiver, I think, is going to be huge. But also maintaining that health and keeping him healthy, I think, is going to be super important as well. So when you're able to do that and capable of doing that, that's a great situation for Penn State. So this game provides that, and they can just build on that depth because, again, obviously with the redshirt rules, you can play freshmen, you can play guys or whoever and still maintain that redshirt. And same thing even after the season, after the regular season in bowl prep and bowl play, even in the playoffs. So that's definitely an option as well. So I think you just go into this game knowing that and using that to their advantage. And Penn State's done a really good job of that under James Franklin, if I can admit that. But it's just one of those situations where now just go in and take care of business, stay healthy, and go into the bye week with some serious momentum at 2-0.
Yeah, and 30 guys played offense last week for Penn State and 27 on defense. I'd like to see that number. I don't know, 35 or 40 on both sides of the ball. It's just such a good game. Like, this is what the early season's for. You survive your big test against West Virginia, and you do more than survive, right? Like, you win the game convincingly. There's zero doubts about Penn State right now. I think it's been fantastic. The national media has kind of caught up to what we've been saying all summer long. Is like, no, like, this team with Kotelnicki can be great. The Tom Allen defense won't really have much drop off from Manny Diaz. So as long as Kotelnicki's offense translates well to the Penn State system, it should not be an issue at all. Drew Allar looks to have grown. I loved him talking smack all weekend long. He needs some milk moment with Jeremiah Trotter's son. I forget his first name is escaping me, but Mike Asty was talking about, like, that's an NFL ready linebacker on the West Virginia defense, and Drew just shoves him to the ground with a stiff arm. So I love the nastiness, like the tenacity that Drew Allar's playing with this year. And man, is it also like he is flourishing in year 2. James Franklin mentioned that, year 2 for a starter, that's big for him for a starting quarterback, is being that much more experience, getting 14 games, 13 games of starting under his belt. And yeah, I'm just excited for the season. I really can't articulate my words well enough to express just how excited I am for it. And then, like, guys like AJ Harris come in and they do well, and Cam Miller had a lot to prove last week, and he did that as well. So there's just so much going on right now, and it's a cupcake game, but there's so much more for us to see and learn.
It's a lot to like. You mentioned AJ Harris. I know previously that I thought the secondary is going to be a strong suit, and they played really well, and I think that's huge. Having that ability, KJ Winston was so good, and so was Jalen Reed, and it's so good to see that,
And
first game.
Jalen Reed was defensive player of the game for Penn State, but then KJ Winston was Big Ten defensive player of the week. Like,
right.
I mean, that's how much better accolades can you get there where both of your safeties get a game player of the week, player of the game award? Like, KJ Winston wasn't even the best person on defense for Penn State from Penn State's perspective, and yet he got defensive player of the week for the conference. Like, buzzing. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the other thing too, is so you've got a lot to be happy with, but there's always room for growth. And we're going to talk about where Penn State can grow here when we come back for the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Back to the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. I'm Jarrod. He's Kevin. Kevin, Penn State has some room to grow. Not a lot, but this is the perfect week to do it, as we talked about in the first segment. You know, it's a perfect opportunity here to get better. So I want to see them just work on sheer execution. Obviously, they had that one bad snap with West Virginia snapping the cadence. And that was a dark spot offensively. But at the same time, you know, Drew Aller comes out, first pass, not great. They did hit that pass again later in the game, and it was a touchdown. So just working out, ironing out the timing and the first week jitters and lack of execution, and just turning that around. And if they're able to do that, I mean, I think they're going to be just fine either way. But that's, if I'm James Franklin, what we want to do against Bowling Green.
Yeah. If you look at Katron Allen, he's 10 carries for 20 yards. You take out Nick Singleton's 2 40-yard runs, he's 11 carries for 34 yards. 34 divided by 11 is 3 yards a carry. Katron Allen, he's doing 2 yards a carry. Cam Wallace, 2.7 yards a carry. Offensive line execution, I think, is a part where that they can gain experience. You learn your gaps. You learn the capabilities. You learn the speed of everybody else that you're playing with in game speed. Like, practice when you're going 75, 80%. Like, defensive lines aren't necessarily going all out while you're working on your run protection. Sure, Katron Allen, I mean, Nick Singleton got 2 seams to run through. He made the most of them with 40-yard runs. But I think from a play-by-play, down-by-down execution, I feel like run offense is something that they need to work on, because what's Ohio State's secondary this year? Is Drew Aller going to be as successful in the air against Ohio State as he was against West Virginia? No, probably not, if you're averaging 2.5 yards a carry. Like, Ohio State's like, that's fine. 2.5 times 3 is not 10. It's less than 10. It's not a first down. So if you're just going to run 2.5 yards, we'll give you that. We don't care. You know what I mean? Those are the things that you have to look forward to later in the season, where you need to start executing now. And then on defense, it's now week 2. Hopefully you're tackling this a little better. There was a couple times Joe and I talked about it, especially like Tony Rojas. Joe and I agreed that it was Tony Rojas, like, didn't wrap up on a tackle, could have stopped him short on 4th down, kind of went like with a glancing shiver blow with his shoulder and missed the tackle. Running back bounced off the tackle and falls forward for first down. Like, wrap up. You don't tackle a lot in the offseason just because of how taxing it is on the body. And now it's week 2. Like, did you get your groove back for that?
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. You know, again, it just comes down for me execution. You know, tackling does need to be better. It can always be better, right? I mean, that's what we talk about that year after year after year. Tackling needs to get better, and it should be better. So, I mean, that opportunity in itself is always going to be there because of every week, you know, you work to get better. But the good news is for Penn State, this is the perfect game to do it, because it's Bowling Green, and they've got a perfect opportunity to come in here and do what they need to do. Get Tony Rojas in the game, keep him healthy. Abdul Carter needs to clean things up. I thought he was a little bit trigger happy there at D-line. So clean certain things like that. Just clean the penalties up and really just prepare. You know, I saw Neil Brown complaining about the officials, and I didn't think they were – I don't –
I've seen a lot better.
There were certainly worse officials that I've ever seen, but they helped West Virginia more than they hurt West Virginia. That was essentially the way that the cookie crumbled there. But again, just for Penn State, just go in and do your jobs. And I think that's really the opportunity here for them, is come in, do your job to the best of your ability, and get out of there healthy. You know, Katron Allen is always going to have an impact in the game. But the best thing about it was that he and Singleton were on the field at the same time. And that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. Katron Allen is going to get his shirt. But some games, they're going to look like that. And I thought he did a really good job in the first half early with the ball. But again, just just taking what's there and utilizing that to your advantage. And Penn State has some serious weapons. We haven't even scraped the surface of how good they can be yet.
Yeah, I think as the offense progresses, is Andy Kotelnicki's going to learn who works the best together in game situations. Like, again, practice feels completely different. This is now week 2 of this brand new system. He's going to learn to optimize who can be on the field and who's going to be most effective on the field. I do love that they just didn't sit last year. I mean, I complained, kicking and screaming. The 2 and 3 tight end formations, seemingly 75-80% of the game. They didn't do that. No other tight end. Tyler Warren played a bulk of the offensive snaps. No other tight end had more than like 21 or 22 offensive snaps on a total of 50. So they weren't in 2 tight end personnel groups for a lot of the game, which was good for me to see because Penn State's offense just got stale. You put more the more playmakers you put on the field, the more plays you're going to make. And I think we saw that. Like the amount of explosive plays that the offense had, it was fantastic to watch. And yeah, you said it. Denida Sutton and Abdul Carter, maybe they weren't the most effective. I think West Virginia has a really good offensive line. I think they impacted the game. I think Abdul was drawing a lot of double teams, and if Abdul didn't get a double team, Denai got a double team. Didn't seem. I mean, TV, you don't really get a good look at it, but it didn't seem like West Virginia was running more than 3 or 4 guys out on routes. It seems like a lot of running back pass pro. And with Penn State secondary, you can't afford to not, or you can't afford to only send out 3 or 4 guys on route patterns. Like you cannot afford to be in max protection. And it seems like Penn State's defensive line at least forced max protection for the passing game. So sure, what's the most impactful game for the D line? No, but it is, again, Abdul Carter's only second game at D end. So I think it's important to watch how that evolves throughout the season. And if he draws a double team all game long, that's fine. It works for the Steelers. DJ Watt draws a double team nearly every snap. So, and the rest of the defensive line just eats. So if Abdul gets gobbled up and you got to send the left guard and the left tackle out to block Abdul, that's fine. They'll bring in Rojas and go outside the left tackle. You know what I mean? There's just so many more things that you could do if you have a guy that's just going to eat up offensive linemen every snap.
They have playmakers at all 3 levels, and
Yeah.
I think that's really hard to defend. Much like offensively, they have players that can catch the ball out of the backfield, receivers, tight ends, and Drew Aller can run the ball. So I mean, they just have different levels and layers that can hurt you, and I think that's what makes this team difficult. And again, you know, before we head into this third and final segment, we haven't yet seen what Penn State's capable of. Yes, the West Virginia win is nice. They won 34-12. Some of us on this podcast had 34-17, if you will. Very close. But the fact of the matter is we have not seen what they're capable of yet. Great game, but there's still room for growth and improvement. And let's be real, that's going to be the best team that West Virginia faces defensively, I think, all year. Could be offensively as well. So, I mean, there's that for sure. But again, you know, for Penn State, they just got to keep taking care of business. And you do that, taking that one play at a time, get your lead. You got to win the game. You can't lose to Bowling Green. And I don't think that'll be in danger, really. But it's going to be ugly as far as weather goes from looking at the forecast. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But perfect day to get your round game going and keep the ball moving.
Yeah, as long as the field doesn't get saturated, the number one thing is win and then get out of there healthy. So they do those 2 things. I think it's a successful. It does say chance of storm, so hopefully there's not another lightning delay.
Oh my God!
I'm sure you'd love to sit through another one of those.
We'll talk about that in the third segment. But yes, I mean, for Penn State, this is a perfect game. It might not be the perfect weather, but again, it's a game in Beaver Stadium. That's what matters the most right now. So see how they do it and see what happens. But for now, we're going to go to the third segment, and we'll catch you here on the flip side after this break on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Kevin, let's get into our game predictions. On most sites, and
do you want the spread?
I don't care about the spread. We're going straight money line. But as we were talking about in the break, I had 42-32 on this fine podcast last week, but on literally every other site and in print, I had 34-17. I'm not quite sure where I got 42-32, but last week was a very long week. And that's why I wasn't on the show on Sunday. I texted Kevin, said I wasn't going to be on. I was wiped out, right? So Wednesday night last week, the Curve were in town, so I covered the Altoona Curve during their home weeks for the Altoona Mirror. And Wednesday night we recorded the podcast, so this is pretty early in the week, so that was kind of nice. Obviously, I had my day job, but did the Curve thing, did this after. Thursday, have a Beating Behind the Curtain podcast. I had a high school coaches show for radio, and then I had the Curve and also work. Friday, work high school football game, which was abysmal. Altoona lost 57-0. It was 50-0 at the half.
Whew.
We started talking about gummy worms at certain points. Sunday, wake up, go to the game, and then come back way later than expected. And Sunday, it was just kind of a recovery day, and it did not go well. But it's a great time to be alive. I am slightly more refreshed and looking forward to only having to travel 45 minutes to and from Beaver Stadium on Saturday. But alas, prediction. I've got 49-12.
All right. For those who do care about gambling, Penn State's spread is minus 34.5 with an over under 48.5. So Jared's taking the over. I, too, am going to hammer the over. I think it's 54-6. That includes 2 field goals. I think Sanders Sahida really needs some confidence. I'm hoping Penn State can put him in some situations where he gets those 25, 30-yard chip shot field goals, really get him in the groove, because something we haven't talked about is Penn State's going to need to be able to kick the ball through the uprights this year, especially in games like the Ohio State game. Should they make the playoff, those kinds of games, you do need a reliable field goal kicker. He did miss his 1 attempt last week, so hopefully Penn State gets the opportunity to make 2 field goals, and hopefully Sander can go 2 for 2. So 54-6 for me.
That's again, like we talked about all podcasts, getting right, and that special teams game matters there too. Kevin, let's discuss around the rest of the Big Ten and essentially the top 25. Game of the week is Texas and Michigan. Lord and Savior Derek Jeter, the captain, is going to be honorary captain for Meat Chicken. And I think that's very valuable as somebody that's, a Derek Jeter guy. I have zero inclination that Michigan is going to beat Texas, as much as that would help Penn State because it makes the Big Ten look good. I got Texas winning that one.
It spreads 7.5. I honestly think that's a 14 to 17 point game in favor of Texas. I have zero respect for Michigan's offense. I think Texas defense is the real deal, and Texas's offense might be even better than their defense is. So if I'm Michigan, I am scared shitless. College game day and big noon kickoff are both in Ann Arbor this weekend.
Gross.
So yeah, I think it's going to be a Big Ten Network on my iPad. Michigan, Texas on the TV.
That's fair.
Kind of weekend. We'll see, but yeah, I think Michigan's overrated at 10. Without a quarterback, it's hard to be the 10th best team in the country.
Preseason rankings don't matter. But
they don't. They don't. They matter for TV.
Florida State. Yes, we called it. We willed it into existence. I
have been walking around with the most smug look on my face all week long.
Boston College, baby. They're a bunch of fighters.
Gloating. And I even tweeted Mike Asti like halfway through the first quarter or at the end of the first quarter. Like, Mike, I told you so. And he waited until after the game to respond. But yeah, I had to let him know that
the Eagles,
I kept receipts.
Fly Eagles fly. Now, my next game is Oregon and Boise State. I'm going Boise State. As much as I like the Ducks and how it helps the Big Ten, you're not going to find a bigger Boise State guy than me. I love the Broncos. I've got the Broncos with the upset in Eugene.
I have to go back and look at the Oregon game because I heard after the podcast I was talking about how bad Oregon looked last week. Apparently, Oregon just failed to execute slightly in their 24-14 win. Dylan Gabriel did go 41 of 49 through the air. Boise State is a 17.5 or 19.5 point dog. Night game in Eugene. Oof. If Oregon has any bit of improvement of execution, I think it could be a long night for your Broncos. I don't think that Oregon plays two close games to Idaho schools.
We're gonna find out. Because of the way the schedule is, we're gonna pick one more game, and it's gonna be an upset alert. And I've got Clemson on upset alert.
I don't know if I'm ready to go Clemson on upstate.
They play App State.
Yeah, they do. I think Tennessee NC State, the 7:30 game is enticing.
That's fair.
I don't think NC State looked. I think they play Western Carolina last week.
Directional Carolinas, man, gotta watch them out.
Directional Carolina's got to watch out for them. I think that's a close game. Tennessee, it's only an 8-point favorite. Night game in Raleigh.
Ohio State has a directional Michigan if it makes you feel better.
Does Florida State go 0 for 3 and lose to Memphis?
This is a great. Speaking of, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Your beloved Arizona takes on their arch rival Northern Arizona.
Yeah, 10 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Not even a real network.
I'm so pumped though. The Boise State game, Boise, Oregon is at 10 o'clock on Peacock. Like, it's gonna be great. I'll be getting home I have a dinner in State College after the game. It's gonna be great. I get home just in time to watch the Broncos take it to the Ducks.
Friday night, if you want to interrupt your NFL kickoff, Duke Northwestern 2.5 at Northwestern's lacrosse converted football stadium. Florida State does not play this week, so
that's rubbing for the best.
They can't lose for a third weekend in a row. They are the first team ever to start the season 0-2 as an AP top 10 ranked team and lose to two non-ranked opponents since the poll era started in like 1936.
They're winless since they sued the ACC.
Winless since they sued the ACC.
They might be going back to the Big East. I don't know if they were in the Big East, but they should have been.
Also, it has to be the record that they are the first team to lose twice before the rankings get updated for the first time. I think I'm very comfortable. I mean, they lost in week 0 and then in week 1, so I think they are pretty comfortable there. And just tough start to the season for Florida State. I've been loving.
Hate to see it.
I love to see it. Another team, West Virginia or Virginia Tech and Marshall. That's niche. That's on the CW. If you got to interrupt your live golf watching to go watch Virginia Tech Marshall, Brent Pry needs a statement.
It's a fighting former Franklin coaches.
Yeah,
Charles Huff at Marshall and then Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. They need a win. Virginia Tech needs a win badly. Marshall is in a great spot because Marshall isn't expected to win, but if they do win, that's great for Coach Huff. Coach Huff beat Notre Dame a couple years ago. I have a program from that game. A buddy of mine called me up before the game, said, "Hey, I'm going to this game. Like, do you want a program from it?" Hell yeah, I want a program from it. And it just so happens it's the biggest loss for Notre Dame in 40 years. And I proudly display it in my classroom. As a reminder to all the Notre Dame fans in Central PA of we are Marshall exist as well.
Virginia Tech 20.5 point favorites.
Hokies had walk-on tryouts advertised that online yesterday. I thought that was pretty funny. I know that's pretty commonplace, but it's hilariously awesome to see that after you lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vanderbilt. I mean, in their defense, it was in Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville's a really tough place to play, Kevin. Yeah, let me tell you.
I mean,
although they did have to shut the student section down, which was, I thought, crazy.
But that stadium was like 60% burgundy. I mean, that.
Oh yeah,
maroon, burgundy, whatever the hell Virginia Tech calls it.
It's maroon. No, don't disrespect the maroon, Kevin.
I block that. Oh yeah, it's the maroon effect. Excuse me.
That's right.
Yeah, no, tough scene for Tech. I really hope Brent. I do not actively root for Virginia Tech. But now that Brent Pry's there, I do root for the success of Brent Pry. So
that's fair. Any parting shots?
Yeah, massive one, dude. Played golf today. Out at a Reese Jones golf course out in New Kent County, Virginia, and I found 10 bunkers today.
10. David Hasselhoff. Very nice.
Reese Jones strategically placed bunkers, and I
found every one of them.
The first 2 holes, I was in 2 bunkers on each.
I played in a Labor Day scramble, and I was money from inside 80 yards, which is really nice. But outside of that, I was about as worthless as the second hand on a broken clock.
I got to tell you, dude, raking 4 bunkers in your first 2 holes of your round. Tough way to start, man. I gotta say, so Reese Jones, if you're listening to this for whatever reason, I do not appreciate your bunker placement because it is good.
Again, Kevin, much like Penn State, has room to improve, and hopefully he does that sometime outside of the golf season. For Kevin Quigley, this has been Jarrod Prugar on the Lasching Out Podcast. We'll catch you again Sunday night into Monday after Penn State Bowling Green at Beaver Stadium.